Hello, greetings of peace. Um, in this video, I just like to talk about, the mindset of today's youth. So I notice a big shift, amongst young people in the values of young people today compared to people of yesteryears. I notice, particularly with young men, that there seems to be a suspended adolescent. Like, I feel like the bar has pushed back. I feel like the phase that most men that I see in their 20s today was like the phase for people that between like the ages of 16 and 19 in previous generations. Pretty much, I feel like adolescence has been extended another 10 years. I'm also meeting a lot of young women and stuff, that I know from prior years, and just going out and interacting in general. I noticed that pretty much the many of the young girls pushing in from even up to their late 20s, early 30s, they still kind of have like a high school mindset, except they have bills, they might have children, but they kind of remind me of like 17, 18-year-old girls. It feels like when I'm out interacting with people my age, I'll be 30 this year, anyway, 30 and below, it still feels like I'm dealing with adolescence. That's what I'm noticing. I feel like, how can I say, when I look out at many of my peers, like, how can I say, they're still in play mode. I notice many of them don't have any thoughts or any plans for anything, regarding to like their vocation, generational wealth, marriage, that kind of stuff. They might have a few children here and there. Sometimes they're with their significant with their child's mother or their father's or their child's father. Maybe sometimes they are. A lot of times they aren't. I notice a lot of us are unable. It's hard for us to live alone. Many of us cannot afford to live alone. Pretty much working. You know what I'm saying. Partying is kind of expensive, but a lot of drinking, you know what I'm saying? A lot of working, a lot of drinking, a lot of trips, every quarter or so. That kind of, well, not really, not every, only, well, they make it seem like that on social media. I know, most aren't taking trips that often, but how can I say? It feels like, okay, since I've left high school, you could say, like, I would have to say most of the people from my age bracket, between 18 to 30, that I have come across over the years starts. It's like stuck in time. You know what I'm saying. And part of this, I believe, is because of the economy. Pretty much, like the cost of living has skyrocketed in proportion to previous generations, and the average wage has not increased in proportion to cover that. So a lot of people now are still dependent on their parents or on roommates or da 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 to make ends meet. Most most of us are not able to afford to purchase a home or land. Um, a lot of us, we're not taught the keys how to rise up through corporate ranks, or a lot of us don't know the keys to, being self-employed and how to generate more income. So, it seems like, pretty much the middle class is done. Not entirely, but I see that in general it's harder for many to break out into the middle class. You know what I'm saying? It's not a given. You have to be innovative and be more harder working and more smarter than the average person. As to previous generations, it was just a given. As long as you were able to maintain steady employment, you didn't have bad spending habits, you weren't on drugs, you could have a pretty comfortable life, maybe even raise a family on one salary. But those days are gone. Um, a lot of it, I think, mostly it's economical. You know what I'm saying? But also the expectations. I noticed, the how, based on how my generation was raised by the parents, the expectation, the bar was set low. You know what I'm saying? You only rise to your highest expectations. If you set low standards, if low standards were set for you at a young age and you didn't have the mind to think beyond that, then your current lifestyle is a byproduct of that, and you know that's unfortunate if that happened. Yeah, so I would have to say, even, for most, I would say the world at large looks at somebody, especially between the age of 25, 30, as still a kid. And, based on the current generation, how things done, you could say that because most still are in state, most between that age bracket still having trouble standing on their own. And, they're just basically into the rudiments of adulthood. I don't really think this is good for the future, though. I think is this, I can tell like the mindset is lacking amongst my generation, men and women. Like there's a lack of drive, a lack of, there's a lack of maturity. I think were people from previous generations more mature based on how I see people 20, 30 years acting and carrying out, I can't say that. I would say that they were forced to be more responsible in a way. You know what I'm saying? Like, no, not forced to be more responsible, that they were able, to take on more responsibility because of the way, society was set up. You know what I'm saying? Many of them were pushed out at 18. They were expected to be married by 25, have kids by 30. It was a conveyor belt, you know what I'm saying? But the economic situation of that time, was a little bit different. So it was more, they were able to push into that, more easier. But obviously, not everybody did well during that time, just like now. But I feel like in general, for our generation, it is more difficult, I would say, than previous generations, just due to the declining of the dollar, because it's a fiat currency, and the more they print, the more it devalues, et cetera, et cetera. And then with the rise of these AI, a lot of the white collar jobs are going away. A lot of that stuff is going to be able to be automated, that kind of stuff. So the next 5 years, I anticipate a wild ride in this country. I think there's going to be a great social upheaval. I believe a lot of people are going to, the homelessness rate is going to rise. You're going to see more people moving back in to live with family. More people working 2-3 jobs. A rise in crime, cyber, and in the physical world. So things are going to go through a dramatic change in this country. It's going to be a whirlwind. In regards to the fate of young people in this country, how they will fare or what they will do, I'm not sure. I only know what the plans that I have. To anybody in their 20s or early 30s who are struggling to stay afloat, I'll look into maybe, learning a skill set that you could monetize for yourself on the side, irregardless of your corporate job or your 9 to 5. You know what I'm saying? A skill that you control and develop, that you could charge independently, for a set rate. You know what I'm saying? To help buffer with the times, I would look into group economics is good. I think like that's the fastest way to get out of poverty and to build a good nest egg, is to find like-minded people and live under one roof and split everything, split all the, chores, and split all the money in. But towards a definite, not living just to live, but with a plan, like some private enterprise or a plan to buy real estate, et cetera, et cetera. You know what I'm saying? For extra income, or like laundry mats, or, when there's more minds connected for a single aim, that's how plans get facilitated faster. So, it's time to skill stack. You know what I'm saying? There's a lot of things that you can get into that, a field that's gonna be high in demand is, cyber security, IT, the trades. You know what I'm saying? Those are three things that are gonna boom. You know what I'm saying, in the next few years, and healthcare, like nursing, stuff like that. It may be time to go back to school and get a vocation that makes sense, just based on the statistics, something that requires the most minimal time study that you can that the pretty much what career makes a decent income and requires the least time and investment to get into. That's what I would look at, regardless of how you feel of it. Even if you don't like what you're doing, if you manage your time well and manage your finances well and build up, your capital, you could find an exit into something else. Just you need something to get you stable and to get your problems off your back. So that's what I would say.